Rob Thompson Charger Career Connect program. This is where we connect you to alums that came through our Charger athletic program, former student athletes that went on to careers using their network, their relationships, everything they've learned while at the University of New Haven, certainly being a student athlete. We try to get on alums that are diverse in just in the business, the sports that they play, but more importantly, allow them to tell their story about their journey. That they sat in your chair, they sat in the same dorms, they slept in the same dorms, they played in the same courts, the fields, the same tracks. They went through the same thing you have gone through, not much different. A lot of them come from the same hometowns you've come from. But this is their story, their journey, and hopefully to share with you and then connect you to them. So not just watching and listening and hearing what everybody is saying right now, what Mark Palmieri is going to, when I bring him on here, what he says, but really connecting to Mark. If there's something that resonates with you, please reach out to not just Mark, but all of our alums that come on this show. It's not just watching and learning. It's you have to take action against some things like these potential mentors that could be a game changer in your life and in your career. So without further ado, Mark Palmieri, he's a 2013 graduate at the University of New Haven, played men's basketball. Is from, we share the same hometown in West Haven, good Westyville, that we're both from. I grew up with his dad. So Mark went on to be a GA, stayed for his MBA, and now he works for Lockheed Martin, started off with Sikorsky, they got acquired and so on. So Mark, thank you for dressing up.
Thanks, Rob, for having me. Feels good to put a shirt and tie, or at least a shirt and a jacket on, obviously, right, with these remote times, man.
Right. Like everybody's shocked when someone shows up and they're dressed up a little bit. It's like either you're going to church or you're going to court, either one, who knows, or you're going to work. But we know we're all dressing like 12-year-olds. So Mark, thank you for looking professional and representing Lockheed Martin in the Chargers.
Rob, thanks for having me. I look forward to chatting here today.
Let's jump into it, Mark. So let's talk about you as a student athlete, playing for Coach Hoteling and being on a walk-on in the men's basketball team and being a massive contributor, not just as a player, a teammate, but then coming back as a coach. Let's talk about the transition in your mindset at that point. Number one, you're a special guy for walking on, right? So, I love walk-ons. I just think the world of them. And you're no different in that regards. You exemplify kind of what that student athlete is. Talk about your mindset as a student athlete and trying to figure out where your career is going to at the university.
Yeah, Rob, I think, coming from right down the road at West Haven, when I got to University of New Haven, I just kind of had it in my mindset. I was going to do the best on both sides, right? As best I could, something I kind of learned, from my dad, effort always being first. And so when I came in, the goal was to be on the dean's list academically. I was a sports management major. And then on the court, kind of tried to just be that guy that gave it every day and pushed folks within the team. And luckily enough, that I think that kind of helped me not only gain the respect of my teammates, but the coaching staff at the time was obviously Coach Hoteling and Coach Carberry, who also was another local product and great player in the area. And I luckily kind of earned some time on the court, backing up two great guards being Jeff Atkins and Justin Exum, and shared some time along with Jeremy Williams. And we ended up having a first NCAA tournament. Coach Hoteling will probably get on me for not knowing how many years, but we ended up making the NCAA tournament that year, which was a great accomplishment, especially in my college career at a high note.
So, the beautiful thing about that is, especially, and we're going to transition over to your, what you're going through with the operations leadership role with a major corporation, right? But when you did that transition from playing to coaching, obviously a sport management major, which a lot of our student athletes are, What was your mindset when you shifted to, I got to start building up some skills for my career? Like, will you focus on, I need to do an internship, or will you focus on, how do I build up my network, of mentors? Where was your mindset there?
I think it was a little bit of both from a mentee standpoint and a work experience standpoint. So early on, one of the courses at New Haven, I think it might have even been an HR course I took early on. The professor had mentioned a kind of a process, and as simple as it is, get an Microsoft Excel spreadsheet and list down every person that might be able to help you. So I did that and kind of then relied on whether it was my dad, another professor, to kind of get a point of contact in that area. And it's an ongoing list that I still use. And then based off that, I even used a lot of the services on campus. I think the athletic department still does a good job about the career development center and using that for your resume building. That was somewhere I went more than just what was asked of you, to kind of always try to create a good groundswell and establish my brand from the mentor standpoint. And then it was like, okay, what can I do to get an internship? I think my first internship was my sophomore year, and it was me just kind of cold calling actually the Silverman Group, which is right down on Orange Street, downtown New Haven, who created the logo for Starter. I think they still promote the Orange Bowl to this day, and they do a lot of ad. And I know you like the New Haven pizza as much as I do. I think it's Market New Haven promoting that. And that was just me calling and volunteering my time. And then I actually had the unique experience where I think that's why you all are doing this program. I knew someone at Sikorsky, and then my junior year, going into my senior year, was asked if I was interested in an internship at Sikorsky in program integration, which I said yes. So I kind of got out of the sports that year, but still had a mentor within the sports management program too that kept me connected with. I was actually with the United States Tennis Association, and then also with the NBA. Gil Fried was kind enough, he knew with my basketball background, to connect me there. And then that was really kind of my story in terms of the internships. I definitely focused on being a little bit different and dynamic in that between sports. And I did want to have like a large corporation on my resume too. Yeah.
I got you. And, a lot of people, including myself, I mean, I was a CJ major who spent a little time in law enforcement, and I shifted back over to sports. So we all go through this discovery, kind of like, man, you have this one idea of what business is going to be like and your career is going to be like. And then reality hits, there's things that you have because you got to pay bills, and, gosh, I can't get through that door, or sometimes it's patience. What was it for you, Mark? What was that? Because I remember you and I having this discussion about, Mark, don't give up on the sports industry yet, and you're like, yeah, but I just, I got this opportunity at Sikorsky, and I'm like, you know what, go in and get that infrastructure, get that solid corporate foundation of working within a corporate infrastructure. And that doesn't mean you could go, but what is it that you found out that you really like about, working for a major corporation?
I think, more than most things in life, I obviously still love basketball. And I think I started to learn too. I liked playing more than the coaching aspect. So, I'm sure coach threw me in there at, scout team, and I loved every bit of it. And, I had transitioned to a coach though. And then, I kind of made the tough decision. I kind of wanted, I don't want to say something more, but with that kind of me figuring myself out, I said, you know what, I had an opportunity at Sikorsky to go back in supply chain. And I think just the fact that the company's so big and there's so many people and so many different avenues you can go and kind of climb the corporate ladder, that kind of felt like my next feat to see how high I could grow at Sikorsky. And then that transition again, where a colleague introduced me to the Operations Leadership Development Program, which I'm currently in my second year of. It's a 3-year program. And I was in a good spot at Sikorsky, but this was another way to kind of make myself uncomfortable. And as I mentioned before, always trying to further your brand and groundswell. And this program actually requires me to move across different, not only geographic, but different business areas within Lockheed Martin. So I guess to answer your question, I kind of wanted to see what it was like to not only work for a big company, but maybe see what else I liked outside of supply chain as well.
Yeah, so talk about this because now that you're kind of you're in that building block of your career, right? You got
Mhm.
some head speed going, and you're kind of you're starting to eliminate some things that you don't like, right, to do, and maybe some people that you, and divisions you want to work for. Advice to someone who's sitting there who's a junior and senior right now, who maybe they don't want to go down the corporate road, but what do you really like about that corporate environment and that corporate infrastructure? What are those, and what are some of the skill sets and mindset, of being a leader and using the skills that you learned with being a student athlete? How are you starting to see kind of all these things starting to click and to kind of come together?
Yeah, I think the skills from a student athlete, first and foremost, I think that it's really been the best for me is my ability to connect with others. And I think that's been both as a player and a coach. Not that you need to be a coach to be able to do that, but that's really helped me excel, I think, where I've done a great, I don't want to say great job, but I've had an easier way, I think, with people, and seeing I've worked with a lot of different people and folks from different areas in the recruitment process with prospective student athletes. And then also just being a student athlete, I think you're used to that. I know you said it, grind, right? Whether it's study hall, weights, you're in a routine. And I think you're kind of built to, obviously always be able to take constructive criticism and feedback. Where I think that's almost what I miss the most, where it's not maybe as a high energy environment, but I think being in that high energy environment, whether it's with Foggy in the weight room, obviously my experiences with Coach Hotaling on the court, whether it be individuals or conditioning or practice, I think that really has helped me exceed past others. Where I've come to be one of those guys that always seeks that feedback out, which I think is very important, in the workforce to improve. And then with that being said too, I mean, with a large corporation, there's a lot of different avenues you can go. I'd say just like in the weight room or at practice, like, Foggy's job is to make you uncomfortable. I think you need to take that and apply that to your day to day, where if someone needs help, you might not be great at it, but be that guy that always steps up and says yes, or that girl, obviously. And I think that's what really will build you the most, because one, you're going to create a, as we talked about before, you're going to continue to expand your network, but two, you're going to learn new skills that you can continue to apply and grow within a major corporation or even a small business. So I think that I would say those are definitely my main words of advice.
So you had a routine, right? As a student athlete, it was
Mhm.
you were scheduled out every day. Talk about what your day to day is like. What all of that routine, and those habits that you created as a student athlete. How does that apply to what you're doing right now? Do you still have that routine? Do you still have an early morning? Like, how does that apply? And I think that share what you go through every day.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm a morning guy. So I still I go to the gym every day at 5 before work, come home, eat breakfast, and then I'm on the computer usually by 6:30, 7 o'clock Central Time to about 5:30 daily. Lockheed Martin actually has a great perk where we actually work on a 4 10-hour schedule. So I have every Friday off. So that's, if those are wondering, it's not like it's a pretty, it's a longer day, but there is a reward each week to a 3-day weekend year round. And then my day to day, I'm still learning it. Obviously, during these remote times, I've been in this new role. So within the operations leadership development program, not to get too sidetracked, Rob, I'm currently going to be working in 3 different 1-year rotations. They run July to July. And like I mentioned, I'll move. I was in Manassas, Virginia last year. I'm currently sitting at home in Fort Worth, Texas. And then next year I can choose to maybe stay in Fort Worth, come back to Sikorsky, or go elsewhere. So this is only month 3, 3 and change for me in this new role. So I'm still figuring out. But that's kind of really how my day is. I'm kind of on the computer at home right now, and hopefully we'll get back to the office here, depending on just the COVID guidelines here with reintegrating back into the main plant down here.
The one thing I say to a lot of our, when I mentor career seekers and for, student athletes and even my own kids, I tell them that homework never stops. Like, you're going to have homework the rest of your life, right? You have projects, you have tasks, so get used to what you're going through right now in college, even though some of it is a little bit tedious and some things you're like, how is this ever going to apply? Believe me, it applies to what you're going to be doing in business. And so talk about that. Talk about, how does that work for you? I mean, what kind of tasks do you have? What kind of planning? What kind of projects? And how is it similar to what you went through as a student athlete, and how does that apply to business today?
Yeah, I think something I kind of developed as a student athlete kind of was always pretty organized. And even I learned a lot of that. Like I said, not to always go back to my parents, but Coach Hotelling as well. I mean, he's pretty detail oriented, from only writing in blue pens, which I always carried for him. But also, just from a preparation standpoint, whether it was, practice, an individual, or obviously games, always exhausting yourself. So that's something I've always tried to do. And I know, as corny as it sounds, and I'm sure the athletic department still gives them out, I use that athletic planner from a notes perspective, whether it's for myself, for homework, for assignments. And my desk and my laptop right now are still pretty full of sticky notes with deadlines. I'm kind of old school like that. I don't really like, I guess, the satisfaction of when you finish an assignment, crossing it out. But something I've done, tried to do a better job, more like you said, those assignments are going to be never ending. But the work is always going to be there the next day. So one thing I've tried to really pride myself in, I'm on early, I'm on to a specific time, but then I have really tried to shut it down at some point to give yourself that mental break. So that's something also I would advise everyone as you're going. Yeah, do you want to create a great name for yourself? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, the work is going to be there the next day. So try to maintain that routine, whether it's, I don't know, 9 to 6, and then you eat dinner, and then try not to look at the laptop. Right. So I do try to do that now, especially as well, take a break from it, and not always be so eager if I hear my email go off to go back and answer that person that evening.
Yeah, you got to prioritize. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But, Lockheed Martin Sikorsky is a partner of ours, and at the University of New Haven, board of governor, and a former student athlete, Mike Ambrose, is an executive there. And so obviously the first thing you think about is engineers, right? We're a pipeline for our engineers that go to work for Lockheed and Sikorsky's. But what major corporations, they go after talent. Right. So, there's specific roles you have as an engineer, obviously at companies like Lockheed Martin, but also business talent, right? Executives, younger executives that come in for operations, management, human resources, business development. There's a lot of, so even though you may not be an engineer, a career path for a company like Lockheed Martin and Sikorsky, obviously they found you. So what advice would you give to any of the student athletes now that maybe want to start going down that route of looking at that as, what are some of the things that they could prepare for, whether it's as simple as, because Lockheed Martin, they looked at your social media accounts. I can guarantee, Mark, they went and did that, right? They looked at your LinkedIn. They did more than just look at a resume, right? What are some of those things that you would say for a student athlete right now to start preparing?
Yeah, Rob, I always think, your resume first and foremost should be an ongoing project. Anytime you leave a job, I always try to update it as soon as I'm kind of transitioning. That way you kind of get your main points. So resume first and foremost is definitely important. And then, I mean, obviously LinkedIn, I've actually been trying to have more of a presence on there myself. I don't think I do a great job at it personally. But also and this is what happened with me. I mean, almost every person in the operations leadership development program, to your point, the majority are either an engineer background, whether it be mechanical, system, I've seen, I think, chemical, or electrical. And then, there's me, we get on calls, and I'm a management of sports industry major. So I would encourage people that as a student athlete, I think that goes a long way. But having a great or a high GPA, being involved maybe a little bit with whether it's SAC or another resource group on campus can also help you out tremendously. But don't be afraid to apply for something just because you might not meet the criteria listed. I think if your resume, as I said, is pretty tight and clean with a unique and dynamic experience, and at least you can get on the phone with people, I think a lot of times student athletes are pretty confident in their approach after being, in a practice field, et cetera. And if you could speak to some of those great experiences, I think more oftentimes than not, employers or hiring managers will definitely take a shot on a former student athlete.
I love it. All right. So let's wrap it up here with my favorite question. First of all, before I do that, how do people reach out to you? How do they connect with you? Is there anything within your digital media space or your social media space that you're a little bit more active in, and obviously LinkedIn? So what is that information?
Yeah, sure. LinkedIn is definitely first and foremost. Mark Palmieri. I'm sure it's MarkPalmieri. And then my email is actually great. I check my personal email daily. Mark, it's my first name again, Mark Palmieri, Palmieri, and then 4@gmail.com. That those two resources are great. And then I'd be happy to give out my cell to those that whether want to have a mentor-mentee relationship or just have some questions maybe as they're pursuing some opportunities at Sikorsky here in the spring or Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, like I said, your network is your net worth, So folks like Mark and our alums that we feature on the show are here to help, right? That's why they've come on here. They're here to answer questions, open up doors, give you advice, practical advice as well. But the last thing, segue, and how's this for a segue? What advice, Mark, would you have given yourself, everything that you know now, right? The anxiety that you went through, the uncertainty, probably times that you had, the great times that you had at UNH, and the challenging times that you had at UNH. But when you got to a certain point now that you're sitting in Fort Worth, Texas, I don't know if people in Fort Worth can handle too many Westies down there, but in Fort Worth, Texas, now that you know, right? Now that you know that it's going to be all right if you try and what advice would you have given yourself back when you were 18?
Yeah, I think if I could have done something differently, I might have sought out an internship outside of my, close knit, New York City area. I would have moved somewhere else, being that I went to school, right down the road where my situation might be a little different. But I think those uncomfortable situations really build most people, and you're not going to get better unless you're uncomfortable. So if there's somewhere that you think you'll never like, or maybe a role you don't think is too interesting, I think the jobs that are usually in a small place that you wouldn't expect much from are usually the best experiences. So I would encourage folks and to do that as well. But that would probably be my one thing I would have changed, and maybe trying to minor in engineering or something that could maybe help me now. But other than that, it's full steam ahead here with Lockheed Martin. So
yeah, well, engineering majors, well, those guys, there's one building on campus that only the engineering majors were hanging out in. That was always the library, and that was always a foreign place for me. But hey, from one Westie and hard charger to another, Mark, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your story. And as always, this podcast is about sharing that information, connecting people together, and knowing that you're not going to be out there alone, and we're not going to just kick you off North Campus. We're going to try to help you out as much as possible. And this is one of the steps to do so. Your careers are long, and you're going to figure out what you hate doing or don't like to do way before you discover a career that you love. So be patient, try everything. And like Mark said, sometimes you got to pick up and move a little bit further along. Don't be afraid to get into that, what doesn't seem like, maybe seems like a smaller business or a smaller job, because sometimes those are the ones that you're going to learn the most. So on behalf of Mark, this is Robbie. You're watching Career Connect, and go Chargers, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks, Rob. Have a good one, everyone.